What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 10 of Faux Football. This is the very real podcast about everyone's favorite fake sport, fantasy football. I'm your host, Chu, and thank you for tuning in after a two-week hiatus. Was sick the first week, and my wife was actually having surgery the second week, so the football did not stop, so we have plenty to talk about. You can follow me on Twitter at Father Dynasty and check out the website, fatherdynasty.com, to check out the Substack podcast and a link to the rankings that I have over at Fantasy Pros for weekly and dynasty rankings as well. And this week is not a disappointment by any means because we have the return of my son making a couple of fantasy picks for me. When he was previously on the podcast, he was 6, has had his 7th birthday, lost some teeth, is now wrestling, has his flag football season over, so plenty to talk about there. Of course, we'll also be covering the Flex and Bust Out, which is some flex options for Week 12, and some This or That, which is a little start sit and a little bit of just kind of my predictions of the more top-tier players, where they're going to finish. But without further ado, let's get into Finn's favorites. Well, by popular demand, my now 7-year-old son, Finn, wanted to be back on the podcast. Finn, thank you for joining me.
No problem.
Whoa, very professional. Well, I think last time you were on the podcast, how old were you?
6, and now I'm 7. 6, 7.
I'm really glad that joke started the year that you were 6 and turned 7. And what did you do for your birthday?
I had a bouncy house.
That's pretty cool. And I kind of feel like, what else is different? Did you have more teeth on the last time you were on the podcast?
Yeah, I lost 2 more teeth.
Wow, okay. Well, and I kind of think, were you doing flag football then?
Yeah, but it's not.
But not doing flag football now?
But that was in September.
Yeah.
It was October, but now it's November.
What are you doing now?
Wrestling and basketball and karate.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. Well, you got your hands full. I'm really glad that you took the time to help me out because I need you to help me with 4 lineup decisions for fantasy football. Do you think you can help me out with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, so the first one, this is in a redraft league. I need you to pick me a running back. Can you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do I start Quinshon Judkins against the Raiders or David Montgomery against the Giants?
Dathan Montgomery against the Giants.
Whoa, you're picking against Mimi and Papa's Giants?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, all right. Okay.
Actually, the other quarterback, because I don't...
The running back. No, we can do David Montgomery. That's okay.
Okay.
All right, next up. So we're picking tight ends here, okay? You ready?
Tight.
All right, this is in a dynasty league I'm in. So do I go Juwan Johnson against the Falcons or Hunter Henry against the Bengals?
Hunter Henry.
Against the Bengals, okay?
Because Henry.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's Hunter Henry against the Bengals. Okay, the next one, this is for Scott Fishbowl. Do you remember those T-shirts I have?
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, so I made the playoffs. This is the first round of the playoffs for that, and I need you to pick me a wide receiver. So, do I pick Parker Washington against the Cardinals or John Mechie against the Ravens?
John Marshy.
John Marshy? All right, I'm going to start John Marshy against the Ravens.
And then next you could do the one against the Cardinals, okay?
Okay, but I'm going to do John Mechie this week against the Ravens? Okay.
Marshy.
John Marshy, okay, I'll tell him to change his name. And last but not least, I've got a redraft league. Am I starting 2 receivers also? Am I starting Darnell Mooney against the Saints, or am I starting Wan'Dale Robinson against the Lions?
Robinson against the Robins.
Buddy, what was that answer? Am I picking Darnell Mooney or Wan'Dale Robinson? Which one am I picking?
Wan'Dale Robinson against the Lions.
So you think his name is One Day Robinson?
Wan'Dale Robinson.
All right, fair enough. So based on your answers, I'm picking David Montgomery over Quinshon Judkins. I'm picking Hunter Henry over Juwan Johnson. I'm picking, I think you called him John Marshmallow against Parker Washington. and I'm picking One Day Robinson, is how you said it, over Darnell Mooney. Is that right?
One Day Robinson.
One Day. I'm sorry, I mispronounced the mispronounced name. Is that right?
Right.
Perfect. Well, Finn, I know you got to get to bed, but I want to say thank you for Finn's favorites.
No problem.
And that does it for Finn's favorites. Now let's get into Flex and Bust Out.
I'm going to flex and bust out of here.
So Flex and Bust Out, this is me going over to Fantasy Pros consensus rankings and picking some running backs and wide receivers that are ranked outside of that top 36, and ones that I think will ultimately finish inside of the top 36. Kind of a rough number I've picked, just kind of thinking about the number of startable running backs, wide receivers, likely who would be even in the flex position. And for this week, it's 3 of each. So for the first of the running backs, we've got Kyle Monangai going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A decent matchup. That Steelers defense has been a little bit more imposing in recent weeks. But I do think the real strength of the Bears as a whole in terms of winning them games is their offense. And while I do understand that DeAndre Swift is very much the 1A of that backfield, Kyle Monangai is firmly the 1B, and he is definitely in the second role, but I do think what he offers is hopefully some touchdown upside. I know when you're getting deeper into the flex positions at this point, especially a running back, you're getting the guy that, all right, are you the touchdown vulture that gets the valuable red zone touches? Are you in a good enough offense to where even if the running back ahead of you gets enough touches, you'll still get some too? That's speaking specifically to the next player we're going to talk about here. So Kyle Monangai here, he is just outside of the top 36 there, and a very good backup, a pretty decent offense this year, but again, kind of living and dying by the touchdown. So if we don't get a touchdown, I don't know he's going to creep inside the top 36, but I'm crossing my fingers on that one. And next is Tyler Algier going up against the New Orleans Saints. Again, like I was just mentioning, talking about Kyle Monangai, Tyler Algier is, very much the 1B behind Bijan Robinson, but he's someone who, despite being behind someone as bell cowish, if you will, as Bijan Robinson, this offense, certainly to this point, is an absolute mess. You've got Michael Penix out, who has already been up and down even before this, but he is now firmly out for the year. So you've got Kirk Cousins. Drake London will be out for Week 12, maybe back for Week 13. And much to my chagrin, because I am a Darnell Mooney fan, but I know he's had a rough season thus far. So I do think that even when all the weapons were healthy, Michael Penix was healthy, Tyler Algier was still involved pretty well. I think that's going to grow. Again, I think everyone's going to kind of elevate. Bijan's going to be, maybe getting even more targets. I do think Tyler Algier is going to get a little bit more volume of touches overall, probably more on the ground than through the air. But it's a division rival in the New Orleans Saints. Looking a little bit better, more explosive, the Saints are, with Tyler chucking it down the field. But again, the Saints are still, not a tremendous offense, not really a tremendous defense either. So I do think Algier more than Monangai, I think, has a better chance of just getting enough volume to be sliding inside the top 36. But again, touchdown upside will be tremendous there too. And that offense is going to be just an absolute mess for the Falcons, but you give it to your playmakers, and they've said a number of times Tyler Algier is an important piece of that offense, so that will, in my mind, continue. And last but not least, for the running backs, Michael Carter going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay matchup. I know he is firmly behind Bam Knight in the running back room, but it looks to be that this is the final week before Trey Benson comes back off of the IR. So somewhat of a desperation play, somewhat of a, Emari Demercado is out firmly. So that happened during Week 11. I think we saw Michael Carter's usage amp up a little bit there. So if anything, it's kind of just, it's the opportunity. Bam Knight, I think, is going to get bulk of the touches, bulk of the snaps, but they've shown, regardless of whether or not Michael Carter was on the practice squad or off the team or whatever, that, if if they elevate him to the active roster at any given moment, he's viable to get enough touches to be fantasy worthy. And I think that's very possible against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, no slouches on the defensive end, but Jacoby Brissett has given life somehow to this offense. And, this is without Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll see another Michael Wilson show. We'll see Trey McBride, obviously, again, Bam Knight. But, I think Michael Carter will be involved enough that I think it could warrant sliding into the top 36. Again, touchdown upside is always fantastic, but I think just sheer opportunity and game flow, it depends on how the script is going for this game. But, yeah, I think it's very possible Michael Carter slips into the top 36. And going over to receiver, very glad that I get to confidently throw this guy into this list, and Andrei Iosivas. So he is going up against the New England Patriots, so not an easy matchup by any means, and not 100% sure who's going to be the quarterback in Cincinnati. I know Burrow had gotten some practices and has been working his way back, and I think it's questionable officially as of this recording. But Joe Flacco is healthy, so I don't know if the logic is you want to start Flacco one more week and then bring Burrow back. Maybe it depends on how this week goes. Certainly will not be an easy matchup necessarily. The New England Patriots defenses are no slouches, and considering the Bengals defense is worse than the historically bad Panthers defense last year. Sorry, the historically bad Panthers defense last year. It's anyone's guess as to how out of hand this game is going to get in favor of the Patriots. But Andrei Iosivas, he is a trusted target there. The volume is not really there when it's both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins healthy. But Jamar Chase is out. Of course, there was the Spitgate, if you will, and he will be suspended for this game. So I do think there's a little bit more opportunity for Iosivas here. And again, the Patriots defense is not bad by any means, but the Bengals, again, regardless of who's at quarterback, are going to need to throw the ball and to be able to score points and keep up with this Patriots offense. So I like the opportunity for both the increase in target share and touchdown upside for Iosivas this week. And like with the running backs, I'm going with a Cardinals wide receiver this week in Greg Dortch, again, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, they've been pretty friendly through the air to wide receivers, to quarterbacks, obviously included in that. And Greg Dortch, he's just, I feel like every season we have this kind of segment where it's Greg Dortch just getting his PPR love, and I think that's kind of what we're living in at this point. Michael Wilson, I think, will get certainly enough targets as an outside receiver, but Greg Dortch, I think he's going to get his, at minimum, 5 catches here against Jacksonville. And again, I don't know what Jacksonville offense we're going to see, and depending on what the Cardinals are going to respond to with their offense. But Greg Dortch, I think, will get enough touches. Again, I always view this in a PPR lens, full point PPR, not half. So that's where I'm looking at him sliding into the top 36. Greg Dortch, simply through sheer volume. I expect 0 touchdowns, but I do still think he can slide into the top 36 there with the PPR points there. And last one is the opposite of the Greg Dortch, no touchdowns, but receptions. Kayshon Boutte, and he's going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Love the matchup. This is his first game back in a couple of weeks. He's been out with injury, and Matt Collins has filled in admirably. I do expect that Matt Collins may still get used in a frustrating amount, but Boutte has been highlighted in terms of his ability to, without a tremendous number of touches, generate touchdowns at a pretty good clip in this offense. And going up against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I have tremendous confidence that we're going to see Boutte getting it. I don't want to get out of hand and say 2 touchdowns, but I do think that if you're getting a wide receiver outside the top 36 who's going to get a handful of targets and a touchdown, how this season's gone, Boutte is someone who I would bet that will, again, by all understandings, he's fully healthy, ready to go. He's going to step in. The report's already there with May. He will get himself a touchdown. He will be in the top 36. I firmly believe that. I think that can happen, and that's what I'm going for. So those are being 3 running backs and 3 wide receivers for Week 12. So that is flex and bust out. And let's get into this or that?
No, this or that.
This or that. This is looking at, once again, at Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. This is for Week 12, and comparing them to my own rankings that I do also have over at Fantasy Pros. You can check the full rankings updated weekly over at my website, FatherDynasty.com. Click the rankings tab. It'll bring you over to that. And it's two kind of battles, two verses for each position. And first up is quarterback. I'm going Brock Purdy going up against the Carolina Panthers to outscore Dak Prescott going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. So part of this is certainly I like Purdy's matchup more than Dak's. And this is Purdy's second game back from multi-week absence where Mac Jones filled in admirably. And I just ultimately have tremendous confidence in Purdy. I'm a huge fan of him. Loved what he's turned his career into, certainly with the deal he got to be in San Fran. Dak, by his measures, no slouch by any means. The offense has been just humming along, but I do think that the defense they're going up against in the Philadelphia Eagles is otherworldly. And I think there's going to be maybe not a tremendous problem. I do think Dak's still going to do reasonably well, but I think Purdy's going to be able to elevate and climb into the top 12. I think Dak could. This kind of feels like the matchup that could pose some problems, some turnover problems for Dak with this Eagles defense. But again, I understand how good CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens are. Jake Ferguson, who has been not phased out, but definitely kind of hampered a bit with once Lamb came back, Pickens the more elevated, him getting less touches there. But all in all, I mean, I think, they're both going to do well, but I do think Purdy will outproduce Dak Prescott here in Week 12. And next up, we've got the battle of the backups. We've got Tyrod Taylor going up against the Baltimore Ravens, a little revenge game for you, and Kirk Cousins going up against the New Orleans Saints. So, again, both of them, not tremendous defenses they're going against. I think the Baltimore Ravens have improved a little bit in recent weeks, getting some people back and healthy. But again, I do think that Taylor is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins at this point in his career, and I don't really know what to think, again, like I previously mentioned on the pod here, about the Falcons' offense as a whole. I understand, it's best case scenario they're going against the Saints' defense, but I still don't know what we're going to expect out of this team. I think it's just going to have to flow almost entirely through Bijan Robinson, but we'll see how that goes. And for Taylor, I mean, this was the team that he started on. I'm a Hokie alum, so loved that he's had so many chances. He's been the bridge QB for so many different places, but he went there when it was Flacco getting his tremendous deal, winning the Super Bowl and everything. And, didn't really get much opportunity there, but, was able to bounce around to different teams and get opportunities. Of course, he's closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning for Tyrod Taylor, Tyrod Taylor. I still have to get used to that one. But yeah, I'm optimistic that he's going to have a better opportunity against the Ravens than Kirk Cousins is against the Saints. Going over to the running backs here, we got Kyren Williams going up against the Buccaneers and Derrick Henry going up against the Jets. So I'm more on the Kyren side on this one. Certainly like the matchup better, although I think Henry, he's dealt with the absence of Lamar Jackson and just how horrible that offense has looked as a whole. But you've seen kind of the revitalization of Lamar's back. When he's playing better, the offense as a whole just operates better. And going up against the Jets, I do think that's a very good opportunity for him to go nuclear. But I think Kyren has been steady Eddie when it comes to running back production. I'm not really concerned about Blake Corum taking away anything meaningful. I know they've been kind of switching off. Corum's got enough snaps to where I'm kind of bothered by it and a little concerned about, it does cap Williams' upside. But he just continues to produce whatever he's given, he just continues to do it. And going up against the Buccaneers run defense, I am optimistic about that. Definitely going Kyren Williams on that one. And next is Sean Tucker going up against the Rams and Zach Charbonnet going up against the Tennessee Titans. So Sean Tucker, this could be the final week that he's going to be leading or co-leading the backfield before Bucky Irving comes back. I honestly have no idea what to think at this point about Bucky Irving, of if he's going to come back, when he's going to come back. I assume he is. And ideally, by the time he comes back, he's going to be tremendously healthy, ready to help them, the Buccaneers, with a playoff push. But until then, I mean, Sean Tucker has very much earned the role that he has kind of assumed as early as this past week, as he kind of overtook Rachaad White. And I think Tucker certainly offers the more home run upside that is very appealing in fantasy. Not the easiest matchup going up against the Rams, but they wanted to keep up with the Rams and that offense, and I think Sean Tucker is going to be a pretty big piece of that. And Charbonnet, fantastic matchup going up against the Titans. And, figuring out between he and Kenneth Walker, as of this moment, I thought there was an injury to Kenneth Walker. I could be wrong on that. But regardless, I do think Charbonnet, even if Kenneth Walker's entirely healthy, is going to be involved enough. But his effectiveness is always questionable. But in this one, easily going Sean Tucker over Charbonnet. So wide receivers, we've got Rashee Rice going up against the Indianapolis Colts and CeeDee Lamb going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Rashee Rice, like that matchup better than Lamb going up against the Eagles. I know obviously I had the Dak Prescott one earlier. And yes, so Rice, I'm taking that side of it. And since he's come back, and I know the Chiefs, they're still battling and trying to kind of show that they're going to make it to the playoffs. They're going to come alive, and they've saved all their good plays and everything for once they made it to the playoffs, because that's how this works. But Rashee Rice has been a huge pivotal piece of this offense, and that does not by any means discount CeeDee Lamb and what he means to the Cowboys offense. But I do think that Rashee Rice just has more upside this week. And for CeeDee Lamb, for George Pickens, again for Jake Ferguson, for that Cowboys offense, I think it'll be a weird week for them. Division rivalries, you never know what's going to happen. I firmly believe that in any division. It doesn't matter if it's the first place and last place team. You simply don't know what's going to happen vis-a-vis the Buffalo Bills, Houston Texans game. Anything's possible. But that Eagles defense is really, really imposing, and I'm pretty concerned about the Cowboys this week. And I do think that Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice, that whole offense as a whole, they're not the same team this year as they have been in recent ones. The ball hasn't bounced the right way a couple of times for them, but I do think they're going to give the Colts a bit of a problem, but I do think the Colts are still going to win, but that will not be without Rashee Rice having a very good game. And second receiver here, we got Michael Wilson going up against the Jaguars, and Jawan Jennings going up against the Carolina Panthers. As you've seen, these are all these decisions are made independently, but I end up picking a lot of the same teams. So I'm going Michael Wilson over Jawan Jennings, and again, the biggest concern in the secondary is J.C. Horn of the Panthers, and other than that, I mean, they have other good players also, but the linebacking core is just an absolute shambles. D-line's also good. And as I mentioned before, with Jacksonville, their defense are no slouches by any means, but we just saw Michael Wilson get an absurd number of targets. I don't think that's going to be replicated necessarily, but I do think he can be in the lower double digits of targets here in Week 12. And I think that sheer volume and what they were able to get out of him last week, I think they can create a lesser version of that. Again, Greg Dortch, who I mentioned earlier, I think is going to get a couple of touches as well. Whatever magic that Jacoby Brissett has going on, I think that will continue. I do think the Cardinals can beat the Jaguars here. And for the 49ers, again, anything's possible. I am the last person to try and guess what the Panthers are going to do on a week-to-week basis. I don't know what team's ever going to show up. But I do expect this to be a better game than maybe they initially thought when they scheduled this before the season. But I don't really have much confidence in Jawan Jennings outproducing Michael Wilson. So I'm going to go Michael Wilson on this one. And sure enough, another 49er, because why not, for tight ends, going George Kittle going up against the Panthers over Brock Bowers going up against the Cleveland Browns. Now, the most obvious piece of this is as I've said this entire season, love to target tight ends that are playing against Carolina Panthers because they do not have a very good linebacking core. Now they really don't have a very good linebacking core because their even previously subpar linebacking core is now also injured. So, and George Kittle, of course, once he comes back from his injury, he's clipping along. He's back to his old self. There's no Brandon Ayuk. It's Ricky Pearsall. It's Juwan Jennings. Of course, Christian McCaffrey gets his revenge game against the Panthers, even though he actually got to go to a better spot. So if anything, the Panthers should be pissed. But George Kittle, I think, will well outproduce Brock Bowers. That Cleveland Browns defense is going to be imposing. They're going to be, I think, not limiting Bowers in the sense of like Bowers, I do still think will be the target leader for the Raiders there. But I think George Kittle is just, I mean, he'll get at least a touchdown. He's going to get enough targets. It's just, I think he could battle Trey McBride for tight end 1 this week, but I think it's kind of tough to do that considering Trey McBride is head and shoulders fantasy points per game above everyone else. Again, a couple of full points above everyone else. But on a week-to-week basis, this seems like the week that someone could outproduce Trey McBride, and that would be George Kittle. And last but not least, the last of everything here, and that is some opponents in Week 12. So we got Dallas Goedert going up against the Dallas Cowboys, and Jake Ferguson going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Dallas Goedert taking him over Ferguson. Matchup is tremendously better. The Dallas defense, I know it's better with them getting Quinnen Williams on the defensive line. I guess it's mildly better with getting Logan Wilson in the linebacking core. Not really sure that makes them tremendously better. But Dallas Goedert, how he's been used, I mean, honestly, even in the red zone, some of like the plays where it's no tush push and he's the one that's getting the passes, and he's just, I mean, he's a good tight end, but he's honestly just getting used better this year than he has in a number of years, I feel like. And Jake Ferguson, he fielded admirably and was on an absolute tear when CeeDee Lamb was out. But now that CeeDee Lamb is back, it's been CeeDee Lamb steps into his normal role. George Pickens elevates to the role that they wanted all along once he kind of got going, and Ferguson is kind of receded back into the third pass-catching role, which is still pretty valuable in a Cowboys offense that throws so much, but again, not what it used to be. So I do think Goddard is basically locked for a touchdown this week and will outproduce Jake Ferguson. And that does it for this week's episode. Again, check out the Substack podcast and my rankings, weekly and dynasty rankings, all of that over at fatherdynasty.com. And hit me up on Twitter at fatherdynasty if you have any thoughts on the episode, thoughts on what you want to see, what you want to hear, since this is an audio-only podcast, or just start stick questions, what have you. And have a happy and healthy Week 12.